So overall, Heaven Sent, masterpiece episode. I don't really have much more to say other than this episode easily gets a 10 out of 10. My goodness, this was so good. Everyone just put their all into this episode. Wow, this was so good. I'm really excited for next time now. I'm so excited. I'm going to watch it right now. I'm going to watch the next episode right now. I'm so pumped for it because it looks so exciting. Okay, I'm so excited. Let's go and watch it. Let's go watch it. Let's go watch it right now. Okay, so I've just watched Hellbent, and let's do it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review / super mega epic major fucking colossal rant on Doctor Who Series 9, Episode 12, Hellbent. I've been looking forward to this fucking rant so I can express my hatred of this episode. And after rewatching the episode, not really much has changed in my opinion. Okay, and before we get into the super mega colossal epic fucking rant, some positives. Actually, do the plot first. The plot, if you can even call it a plot, is that the Doctor returns home to Gallifrey, only to then depose Rassilon, president of Gallifrey, and become president in his place. However, the Doctor then extracts Clara Oswald before her death in Face the Raven, and then proceeds to try and rescue her and prevent her from death, basically breaking all of his rules that he established in the Day of the Doctor, and going against the Time Lords once again and running away from Gallifrey. They meet up with Ashilda / me at the end of the universe, and then the Doctor decides he's going to erase Clara's memories of him so that she'll live a normal life without him, but then eventually changes his mind after Clara protests and causes his memories to be erased, and so he would forget about her. Either way would have prevented the Time Lords from trying to find her. And then Clara and me go off travelling in time and space in a TARDIS disguised as an American diner, the one we saw in The Impossible Astronaut. And the Doctor gets out Clara and just goes on his way. But Clara will eventually go back to Gallifrey to go back to where she died. But first, she and me are going to have a bit more travelling in time and space. And there's all this stuff about the hybrid or something. I don't really care. That's Hellbent. What a disgraceful episode. Okay, so on to the positives, because believe it or not, there are some positives. The first third of this episode is actually quite brilliant. I would even go as far as to say it was fantastic if it wasn't ruined by events that would happen later in the episode. So we'll just say it's brilliant, because it can't be fantastic due to what happened later. So the first third of the episode sees the Doctor return to Gallifrey. He's pissed off with the Time Lords following the events of the last two episodes, and he's drawing sand in the line, physically as well as metaphorically, and he's trying to find out why they've done this to him, and they want to know what the hybrid is about. And also, this is the first time the Doctor's been back to Gallifrey since the end of the Time War, since they saved Gallifrey in the Day of the Doctor. It's all been building to this. And whilst some of the actions on Gallifrey can be seen as not questionable, at least it's sort of building towards something that the Doctor's taking back his planet from the evil Rassilon, played this time by Donald Stumter, because Timothy Dalton wasn't available for filming, which is disappointing. Then again, considering how they treat Rassilon in the story, perhaps it was best that Timothy Dalton wasn't on the receiving end of such poor treatment in the writing department, although he probably would have done a better performance. Rassilon just comes off as a shouty, ranty man in this episode, as Stuart Hardy put in his review, and it's the character's supposed to be the most powerful character in Time Lord history. He's the one who beat death and had this sort of eternal sleep or something, or at least he died. But because he had the power of immortality, he was able to sleep, still be alive but sleep through millennia, and maybe waken at some points, like during the Five Doctors and the novel The Eighth Doctors, to do some stuff. And then after that, he kind of went and did his own things with the Divergent arc in Big Finish. And then he was resurrected for the Time War, and now we have post-Time War Rassilon, and he's basically lost all his power by this point. He's now just a shanty, ranty man. At least Timothy Dalton's Rassilon, A, was written better, and B, had Timothy Dalton in the role. That made the character more threatening, even if he was shouting. And he actually proved to be a force not to be reckoned with in the first scene of part 2 of The End of Time. He proved himself to be a dangerous threat, whilst here he's just a shouty, ranty man. Side criticism, I'm not so keen on the fact that they only have part of his left hand covered by a metal thing, as opposed to the proper gauntlet, as we see in The End of Time. And it's kind of a bit pointless anyway. Apart from a bit where he's going to kill the Doctor at one point, it's not really needed. Maybe if it was the actual gauntlet, it could have made a bit more of a it could have made some more threatening gestures. Anyway, so the Time Lords stand with the Doctor, and then the Doctor takes over Gallifrey. But it's shortly after he decides to extract Clara is when the story stops being good. Yeah, there was some not so good bits beforehand, but I mean, it could have still been good. But then it all goes downhill once we get to the Resurrection Chamber. We'll get back to that. Other good stuff, the acting is at worst good and at best superb. Peter Capaldi in particular is absolutely outstanding. Jenna Coleman has one last good performance, and the rest of the supporting cast range from good to brilliant. It looks fantastic, the visuals are amazing, and Rachel Tilali's direction and the editing all work really well. Oh, and Murray Gold does some great music, including a guitar version of Clara's theme. Right, that's the good stuff out of the way. On to the bad stuff. Okay, so pretty much everything that goes wrong here in this plot is completely down to a script level. It's the same problem we had with Asylum of the Daleks, and more or less the same problem with Magician's Apprentice, which is familiar. Everything that went wrong was on a script level, everything on a plot level, everything on a story level. Stephen Moffat, you can't have thought this was good enough. Seriously, okay, the first third, that was good, apart from why the Doctor was in America in the first place. We'll get to that. Apart from going there and being a bit weird and all that stuff, whatever. Most of the stuff on Gallifrey in the first third was pretty good. Although the Time Lord farmers do look a lot like normal Earth farmers, but I suppose they only had those costumes in stock. Honestly, it's the least worst issue we have with this story. But yet the first third is more or less good, even if the Doctor doesn't do an awful lot. He's just waiting for Rassilon to turn up. But I suppose silence speaks more than words, I guess, and the Doctor uses words as weapons, so saying nothing kind of helps a little. By the way, why did he change into a black jacket? He had a red jacket at the end of Heaven Sent, and then some time between the end of that and start of this, he turned it into a black one for some reason. Where did the red one go, and where did the black one come out of? Clara even brings this up later on. But like I said, the first third more or less has quite a bit of good stuff going for it. But once we get to that bloody extraction chamber scene, it's game over. It's game over for this story. It's game over for this series. In fact, it's probably the rest of this episode that gives Series 9 the bad reputation. And Sleep No More. Maybe a few other elements of the other episodes as well, but mostly this episode and Sleep No More. Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised that this episode has such a bad rap because of this episode. So, basically what the Doctor does is he brings back Clara just before she dies in Face the Raven, supposedly so she can help him and the Time Lords with the hybrid stuff. I'm not really sure how, considering he only mentioned it a few times, at least on screen, to her about the hybrid. And yeah, she probably doesn't know anything about hybrids. I suppose the only thing I suppose the point of her being there is so the Doctor can feel more comfortable about talking about the hybrid, and so he can have one last proper goodbye. After all, we did spend a lot of time grieving in the last episode, so maybe he could have one last adventure. She can help him out, and then say goodbye at the very end, and then that's that. And she goes back to her death on good terms after saying one last goodbye. That doesn't happen. No, instead, the Doctor decides to run off and try and save Clara. So basically, everything that happened in Heaven Sent comes to absolutely fucking nothing. At least in the terms of him getting over the grief of Clara's death, getting over his grief and pain, and coming to terms with her death. All of that 4 billion years, 4.5 billion years, they say in the episode he was in that confession dial. 4.5 billion years. And he learnt nothing. Absolutely nothing. So, him winning at the end of that story now becomes redundant, considering A, he could have got left at any time if he just talked about the hybrid, and B, he doesn't learn anything from the experience. Whether that's one go around or all goes around that he did. And it also demands Clara's death in Face the Raven because she is going to go back and die at some point, but first the Doc's going to try and save her, and then at the end she's going to go back, but the long way around, so meaning she's going to have a lot of adventures in me before she goes back. So this kind of undermines that death in Face the Raven. If it was just getting Clara to come and help, and then she helps him out, they have one last adventure, and then at the very end she goes back, and that's it. Then that works. That works really well. Honestly, Perry got more respect when she was revealed to be alive following her supposed death in Trial of a Time Lord. Seriously, at least she didn't have to be resurrected, and then the Doctor had to fuck around and then wipe his memories of her, and then she went back to her death and fixed point in time. No, it was just a trick. And she's alive and well and went off with King Yukarnos. Say there's worse people to go off with. Better to be with Brian Blessed than, I don't know, Donald Trump or someone. So yeah, Perry got a better deal than Clara does, because at least Perry, even though it looked like she had died, and then it turned out, oh, she went off with King Yukarnos. And yes, that doesn't work as well as the death scene in Mind Warp. But at least Ultimate Foe gave her a respectable ending. Whilst here, fuck me. To make matters worse, the Doctor kills the General on his way out. Why? This is the worst moment in Doctor Who history ever. This is one moment the Doctor goes against everything he ever stood for and kills his friend, the General, a man who he was more or less friendly with throughout this episode and in the Day of the Doctor. And what's worse is the General was right. The Doctor couldn't save Clara. They couldn't have her out of the extraction for long. They just needed her help for a little bit, and then they had to put her back. But the Doctor just went off the deep end in this one, and he more or less, I suppose, he became the villain. Once Rassilon was gone, the Doctor was the villain of the story. Stephen Moffat is showing a big disrespect for all of these characters by doing all of this, by the way. And so when the Doctor shoots the General, he's basically killed a man. Of course, the General regenerates, but effectively the Doctor ended their 10th incarnation, as they claim. And the 11th incarnation is played by Tiana Miller, so we see the first instance of a Time Lord regenerating from male to female on screen, although the Corsair had already been mentioned to have a few male and female incarnations, and the Master, of course, had turned into, regenerated into a woman. But both the Corsair, it was mentioned, and with the Master, it was off-screen. This is the first on-screen appearance of a Time Lord regenerating from a man into a woman, and also the first instance of a white person regenerating into a black person. Both of these could set up the future of the Doctor and other Time Lords regenerations further down the line. Unfortunately, Stephen Moffat has to go and screw this up by having the new General make some comments about being a man and how do they how did they cope with all that ego and stuff? To quote Billy Tracy in his "Does Doctor Who Have a Feminist Agenda" video on the Five Who's fans channel, he says the idea of the general regenerating into a woman is fine, but what's not fine is the fact that she then makes some problematic comments about being a man. And I completely agree. This is probably why so many people are upset about the Doctor being a woman now, or the Timeless changing gender, in case they make problematic comments. Although, as of time of recording in it's the 29th of January 2021, the 13th Doctor has not yet made any comment about being a male that was problematic. She has mentioned she used to be a man, but she hasn't made any problematic comments about that, nor any problematic comments about being a woman either. Well, apart from the Witchfinders when they all thought she was a witch, but under the circumstances, that's understandable, because they were accusing her of being a witch. So Stephen Moffat only really did this to show that a Time Lord can regenerate into a woman and a white person can regenerate into a black person. And it was in the most contrived and awful way possible. Regenerating someone from male to female, from white to black, from young to old, the latter of which has been done for decades. See the first regeneration in the 10th planet. But those are all fine. That's completely fine. Because Time Lords, I know some people are going to get all bitchy about it, but it's called regeneration. They can literally change their face, their personalities, everything. That's the whole point of regeneration. So it's fine. But what happened here was very contrived and it felt bad. The regeneration itself, fine, but the comments afterwards, yeah, no wonder people are so pissy about it nowadays. And it doesn't help that the whole reason for the regeneration was awful, and that was the worst moment of the show, literally. The Doctor shooting a man to death and not being in the right. I mean, the Doctor has shot people before. He's shot the Cybermen quite a few times in the 80s, but this is the only time where he shot someone who was in the right. This is a friend. This was someone who was trying to help, and the Doctor just killed him because he was being a bit selfish. The problematic comments don't really help Moffat. It doesn't really help. We know you're trying to be smart and witty, but it's coming a bit. It's not helping. And once again, I don't know whether this is sexist towards men or towards women. Either way, it doesn't feel right. Say what you like about Chris Chibnall's writing of the 13th Doctor, but at least he hasn't written anything about her complaining about having been a man before that incarnation, or being superior to the other incarnations because she was a woman. Although some idiots in the fan base think that she might, or she thinks she's superior to her predecessors because she's a woman, but it's never said on screen, it's never shown on screen, so those people seem to be paranoid over nothing. Especially once Series 11 had aired and there wasn't any need to be paranoid anymore. We then go into the cloister chambers and we then have a roller coaster ride sort of thing where there's a Dalek, some Weeping Angels, and the Cybermen that apparently attacked this place during the Cloister Wars. They're just there for pointless cameos. Okay, the Dalek I can understand because of the Time War, but the Weeping Angels, they're just there because they're Stephen Moffat's creations, and fan favourites, and the Cybermen, because this is episode 12 of the series, the Cybermen have to be in every episode 12 of the Moffat era. Whether that's in a major role like in series 6, 7, and 10, 8 and 10, or in minor roles like in series 5 and 9. But all three are basically pointless. And then the Doctor and Clara gets to this hatch and they have a bit of a conversation, including the bit where the Doctor basically corrects Missy from Magician's Apprentice that he didn't kidnap the President's wife, he kidnapped his daughter, and he lost the moon, not stole it. So that must have been the lie she was talking about, or at least a mix of facts. Did she mention the Cloister Wars? I think she might have. The other thing was when he was a little girl. Well, I would say that could tie in with the Timeless Child stuff, but the Master wouldn't know that until the Sacha Dhawan incarnation, so I'm guessing that the lie was probably that. Then again, maybe it was this one after all. Maybe Missy was toying. Anyway, so the Doctor and Clara have some conversations where Clara gets upset that the Doctor puts himself through all that pain, and upset with the times that he put himself in, that they put the Doctor in the pain in the first place. Whilst I can understand why the Doctor would want to not give them the information in Heaven Sent and go through all of this in order to find another way out and win on his own terms, he still doesn't talk about hybrid. I can understand it being a secret, but if it threatens Gallifrey, you've got to start talking. He's got to start knowing, and this is the finale. We've got to get our secrets out. But no, the Doctor and Clara get inside an old TARDIS that looks like the first Doctor's TARDIS, and they try to run away, and they run to the end of the universe, where they meet me, Ashilda. The Doctor and her have a bit of a conversation. They theorise what the hybrid could be, so the Doctor really doesn't know what the hybrid is. Yet, all this talk about him going down to the cloister chambers and being told by them and finding out the stuff, and then running away from Gallifrey because he was scared of it, and yet nobody knows what the hybrid is. It's just stories. So why are the Time Lords getting so scared of it right now instead of, say, back when they captured him in the War Games, or back when they were in trouble in The Deadly Assassin, or back when he was on trial in Trial of a Time Lord, or during the Time War? The hybrid has just come out of nowhere all of a sudden. Davros just brings it up. The Doctor sent his confession dial to Missy just to start off the whole thing with his shame and guilt about Davros, and then later it's being used here again. But it just feels like it's just come out of nowhere. I don't mind changes to the canon if they work, but this one just comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't really have a proper payoff. I mean, what theoretically is the hybrid in the episode? What the episode kind of says is the hybrid is the Doctor became the hybrid because he went against everything he ever stood for, and he became the villain of this story, the monster. So he was the hybrid. That doesn't really explain it. That doesn't really work. Oh yeah, and for those who hate the whole half-human stuff from the TV movie, that gets theorized here that the Doctor might be half-human. Another theory is that it's the Doctor and Clara as two separate beings together, but together they make the hybrid. All of this sounds absolutely ridiculous. But the most ridiculous is that the Doctor becoming the villain does mean he did become the hybrid. So all of this build-up about the hybrid, once again, comes to absolutely nothing. If the Doctor hadn't gone evil, if he hadn't been stupid, if he hadn't been selfish, then perhaps the hybrid wouldn't have had to be a problem. The Time Lords would have realised, oh shit, maybe we should have behaved better. And then they try to apologise to the Doctor, trying to make things up, and they try and have us all out. Heck, if Hellbent was a party episode, it was just a party to celebrate the Doctor's return. He brings Clara along for one last hurrah before she dies. The Time Lords make an apology, etc. That would be a great ending, because it's a big party. It's a great party. Everybody comes up and we have a celebration. Okay, maybe it would have only worked if it was the last 5, 10, 15 minutes of the episode, as opposed to the whole 60-minute episode. But still, I probably would have preferred a 60-minute party, or at least a 40 to 45-minute party after the stuff at the beginning, instead of this crap. Seriously, why couldn't we have the party? It would have been fun. But no, we have to have this. So yeah, and it just comes to an absolute major disappointment. And on top of that, not only is the Doctor the villain now, but the story kind of just gives up. It's mostly Dr. Clara talking, Dr. Me talking, Dr. Clara me talking, a bit of Time Lord earlier on, and also Hilla, the Sisterhood from Khan leader, is in this episode for some reason, as is 2 other Sisterhood of Khan members. Yeah, I don't know why she's in this one, apart from to give a lecture at some point about the Doctor breaking his rules, etc. This is the last time we'll see her, by the way. So the Doctor's probably lost a friend because of this. He probably won't remember it until just before his regeneration. But yeah, he might remember something. But yeah, they just this story just fucks up everything. It fucks up the storyline of this series. It fucks up the last 2 episodes, and also the pretty good stuff that was in earlier in this episode. And it kind of fucks up the Doctor's past. Yes, the Timeless Children's going to do that again, but A, that's not finished yet. We've only just begun that story arc at the time of this video recording, and B, that's a more major storyline, so it can't be swept under the rug as much. So it has to come to a good payoff, or at least a satisfying payoff. This is a smaller changed the canon, but yet it kind of affects the bigger ones, like the running aways and everyone knowing about this stuff. And yes, it comes to a super unsatisfactory conclusion and climax, and it just doesn't work. It pays off so badly, so it never gets brought up again. Although you could argue the Cyber Masters in Timeless Children could be the hybrid. Honestly, that is better than what we did get here. I honestly think that is better. So Chris still managed to wrap up the hybrid arc, and pretty decently, even if well, I say decently, better than this. Hopefully the Timeless Child arc will wrap up better than this. But as I said, that's still ongoing, so we don't know yet. But as for the hybrid, fuck it. It seemed that Stephen Moffat just wanted a story arc this series, and Ashildr was only going to be in 4 episodes, so Moffat needed something else throughout some of the other episodes. So we got the Doctor's Confession, the Confession Dial, and the hybrid. And it came to absolutely fucking nothing. And on top of that, the ending kind of sucks as the Doctor's dropped off in America. He's talking to this waitress who looks like Clara. We could have thought it. We might have thought it was a splinter of Clara when she went into the Doctor's time stream in name of the Doctor. But no, it's the real Clara. She's just putting on a front. She's just pretending she's somebody else. And the diner turns out to be the TARDIS. How the 11th Doctor didn't notice that that back room was a TARDIS console room when he went to get his little straw in the Impossible Astronauts, I don't know. Also, there's the diner itself seems to be the corridor to the control room. I mean, on the outside, looking like an American diner makes sense, but inside, they actually have part of the diner before you get into the console room. That is odd. It's not like it's not like the TARDIS has a box. Is actually inside a box and it is just a police box. But if you tap the back wall, it will open a secret door which will lead inside the TARDIS itself. No, the TARDIS is well. There might have been a little bit of a corridor in the classic series TARDISes, including the TV movies one, between the police box doors and the big main doors. But that was just a small corridor, and maybe the police box doors were to disguise the bigger doors on the inside. But from the 2005, the TARDIS doors always opened into the console room. The police box doors, they were actual police box doors when they came. Even with the Whittaker TARDIS, where they actually had the two sides of the police box, and the front where the TARDIS doors opened, and they had the two sides, and then the back was the doorway into the TARDIS. But even that works, because you kind of have a little bit of a corridor that still forms part of the box, and then through the back is the rest of the TARDIS. And it's kind of all squeezed into this, but at least they use those other two sides of the TARDIS. Also, I like how that in the 2005 to 10 TARDIS, they have the bits of where the police public call box sign on the outside is in the inside. It's around the console. That's a nice touch. But my point is that none of the TARDISes had some sort of... It was just a box and then a secret door at the very back. It was either a small corridor between the police box doors and the big doors, the police box doors going directly inside, or in the case of the 13th Doctor's TARDIS, the police box doors going inside a space that would be what the box is, but at the very back was the entrance to, was the opening to the rest of the console room, and the other two sides sort of made a mini corridor. Which is actually, I really like that, by the way. And so the Doctor is left in the middle of the desert, and then he goes back into the TARDIS. And, you know, these final few minutes are trying to be some sort of victorious, grand exit, finale, final couple of scenes, ending off the series on a grand note. But it doesn't work. Considering everything that's happened in this episode, it doesn't work. It doesn't pay off very well. Who wanted this? Who really wanted this? Clara and me flying off into time and space in a diner when Clara had a great death in Face the Raven, and yeah, she will go back and allow herself to die at some point, but first she's going to go around the long way, and then the ending just feels like it's a grand, victorious conclusion to the arc, to the series, etc. But it doesn't feel earned, and I don't think it works. Stephen Moffat, did you really think this was good enough? Because it's not good enough. You have done better. The last episode was fucking fantastic. Why did you have to go and ruin everything? And I get Hellbent has its likers, it's got its fans. I can understand where they're coming from, but in my opinion, this episode sucks. I'm sorry. I mean, the first third is good. It's very good. But once we get to the extraction chamber stuff, it's shit. It's absolutely fucking shit, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Peter Capaldi deserves better, Jenna Coleman deserved better, as did the Doctor and Clara. The actors deserved better, the characters deserved better, Rachel Catalani as a director deserved better, the production team deserved better, and the fans and the audience deserved better. However, like I said, there were some good points in this episode. It's not a complete, utter train wreck. There is some good stuff in this, some amazing stuff, but the script, the story, the plot, after that third way mark, about 18, 19 minutes in, once we get to the extraction chamber room, it just goes so downhill that it's still falling. Imagine the Doctor falling from Heaven Sent from the window into the water. Now, times that by about 10, and that's basically the rest of this episode once the Doctor says he needs to speak to Clara. Once that happens, the episode is going to fall 10 times as high as the Doctor did in Heaven Sent before it splashes the water at the very end. So, Hellbent. This is definitely the worst episode of the revived Doctor Who, and that is including the episodes that will follow with the Husbands of River Song in series 10, 11 and 12, and probably also in series 13, although never say never. Then again, series 13 could be the best 13th Doctor series. Again, never say never. I honestly don't expect Hellbent to be topped, shall we say, in the worst episode department just yet, but like I said, never say never. This episode sucks, and alongside that, it's also one of the worst episodes of the show, full stop. It's one of the worst serials of the show so far. In fact, I'd probably even go as far to say it's the third worst story of Doctor Who. Personally, I hate the Space Pirates and Warriors Gate more. Space Pirates was boring, dull, and I also hated watching it, and Warriors Gate I also hated watching it. I got angry at both those episodes. This one I wasn't so angry whilst watching, but it's definitely terrible. It's definitely a terribly bad story. Also, the visual execution and the acting and the directions kind of help it be better than those other two stories. But this is definitely one of the worst episodes, especially on a plot level. I will be giving Hellbent a 2 out of 10. Yeah, it managed to secure 2 because of the first third, the great acting, the great directing, the visuals. But if those elements weren't there, this would be a 1 out of 10, maybe even a 0. I try not to give zeros if I can, because there's usually at least one good element in something. But yeah, this definitely would have been a 1 if it wasn't for the good elements I mentioned earlier. As it stands, a 2 out of 10 basically fits the episode. I did wonder whilst watching the episode, maybe it could be a 3, but because it is quite insulting to the audience, and especially to the fans, then no. And because it also lets down the good stuff we got earlier on in the episode with the later stuff, then yeah, I think the 2 works fine. If this was a classic series episode, I think it would have gotten a 1. Not to say that the new series is better than the classic series, although I might prefer it to the classic series, but it's what I grew up with, so it makes sense. I think the difference is the style of television, with the directing, the acting, the visuals, etc. If they weren't so good, it would not be a 2 out of 10, and it would be a 1 out of 10. And then the classic series had quite a lot of good direction and visuals and stuff, so maybe it would have been a 2 out of 10 either way, or maybe it would have been a 1 out of 10 either way if it wasn't for all the good stuff. Well, when I say all the good stuff, all of what little there was. This episode sucks. This episode sucks. This episode sucks so much. So that's it from my review / rant on Hellbent. Thank you for watching, and that's basically series 9 over with. apart from the 2015 Christmas special, which is counted as part of Series 9. So we still have one more review from Series 9, and then we're on to the ranking, and then we'll finally be on to Series 10. Thank goodness. We need to get away from this episode as fast as possible. Next time, The Husbands of River Song, the 2015 Doctor Who Christmas special, which I believe is the most pantomime episode of Doctor Who, and in all honesty, after this episode, we're going to need a pantomime. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.